The train came to a sudden stop and Clara was pushed forward, colliding with the body of a man who was approaching. She quickly stepped back, but he didn't. He stood there, motionless, very close, as if waiting for her to do something. His gaze was fixed on her and Clara felt a wave of panic take over her body. The tension in the air was palpable. The car now seemed too small for both of them. He was so close that she could feel his hot breath against her skin. She tried to look away but couldn't. His eyes were locked on hers, penetrating as if whatever he was planning was about to happen. The train continued its journey, but to her time seemed to slow down. Fear began to grow. Each second felt like an eternity. "You're alone, aren't you?" His question was low but clear enough to cut through the sound of the train. She didn't answer, but her body betrayed the response. The fear was so intense that she couldn't even move her lips. He smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was a smile of satisfaction from someone who knew exactly what they were doing. She looked around, seeking help with her eyes, but no one seemed to notice. Everyone was immersed in their own worlds. No one saw her. No one noticed the looming threat. She was completely alone. If you're as curious as I am about what's going to happen next, like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any details of this story. "Aren't you going to call anyone?" he whispered, as if he knew what was going on in her mind. "Because no one's going to help you, you know that, don't you?" His smile widened, and she felt the weight of those words. Panic paralyzed her. She didn't know what to do or how to react. What did he want? She didn't know, but one thing she knew for sure. He wasn't there by accident. He had something in mind. Something that made her feel completely vulnerable. The train made another turn, and with the movement she was thrown a little forward. Now he was even closer. The pressure of his body nearly suffocated her. She wanted to scream, but her throat was tight, as if the words wouldn't come out. She didn't know whether to run, scream, or wait for him to leave, but something inside her told her he wasn't going to leave so easily. He took a step toward her, and the distance between them disappeared. She felt the heat of his body, felt his eyes watching every move she made. "Didn't you know this was going to happen?" His voice was soft, but full of authority, as if he were dictating the rules of the moment. She tried to subtly step away, but the movement didn't go unnoticed. He was too close now. The tension in the cabin was rising, and she felt as if the air was getting thicker. The train was passing through a tunnel and the lights flickered, making everything around her seem even more distorted, more frightening. The sound of the tracks seemed distant, as if she were alone in the world, with only that man. She tried to look at the other passengers, but they were oblivious to what was happening, as if she were invisible. "You're going to stay quiet, aren't you?" he whispered in her ear, his hot breath on her skin. He was so close that she felt the fear swallowing every cell of her body. She wanted to step away, scream, but she couldn't. Something was holding her back. He was there, pressing her, feeding on the fear he was creating. "I warned you," he said, with a tone that grew more threatening with every word. "Now you'll see what happens." His smile widened again, and she felt a wave of dread take over her. The train passed through a station, and she saw the door in front of her. It was as if it were a million miles away. He was blocking the only exit. She couldn't run. She couldn't scream. All she could do was stay there, waiting for him to do whatever he wanted. And the worst part was that she didn't know what he would do. He was there, stronger, closer, and she had no strength to react. Fear had overtaken her so much that she couldn't even think clearly. She didn't know if he was waiting for something, for a move from her. Every second that passed made her feel more vulnerable, more helpless. The train continued its journey, but to her, time seemed to stop. His gaze was so fixed on her that she felt as if the world had disappeared. There was only her and him. She wanted to scream, ask for help, but something inside her told her it was too late for anyone to care. He had control. He knew that. And she was lost. The train made another turn, and with the movement, Clara was thrown a bit forward. Now he was even closer. The pressure of his body almost suffocated her. She wanted to scream, but her throat was tight, as if the words wouldn't come out. She didn't know if she should run, scream, or wait for him to leave, but something inside her told her he wouldn't leave so easily. He took a step toward her, and the distance between them disappeared. She felt the heat of his body, felt his eyes watching every movement she made. "Didn't you know this was inevitable?" His voice was soft but full of authority, as if he were dictating the rules of that moment. She tried to discreetly move away, but the movement didn't go unnoticed. He was too close now. "Are you scared?" he said, his voice sounding like a taunt, a soft whisper, almost as if he enjoyed the control he had over her. He knew her fear fueled him. Every second she spent without reacting, he grew more confident. Time seemed to slow down, and she felt the pressure in her chest increase. It was as if the train cabin was getting smaller with each second, as if she were running out of air, out of control, out of options. She quickly glanced at the door, a few meters away, but it seemed too far. She knew there was no way to escape. He was between her and the only exit. There was nowhere else to run. The fear made her want to scream, but her throat felt tight, dry. She couldn't make a sound. He was there, getting closer, and she didn't know what he wanted. What would he do? He seemed to be waiting for something, but what? Was he waiting for her to make the wrong move, to act impulsively, so he could deliver the final blow? She didn't know, but the tension was becoming unbearable. She looked at the other passengers once more, hoping someone would care, that someone would notice what was happening. But again, everyone was immersed in their own worlds. Her loneliness in that moment seemed absolute. She felt the emptiness grow inside her. She was alone, and he knew that. He was feeding off it. "Are you going to let it happen?" he taunted, leaning a little closer to her. "Are you going to give in so easily? You're scared, and I like that. I like knowing that no one can save you." Those words cut through the silence. She felt suffocated, as if there were no way out. The train made another turn, another sudden stop, and she was pushed even more against the man. But this time something inside her changed. The fear was still there, but something else was beginning to grow within her. A wave of frustration, anger, and the need to act. She could no longer stay there, powerless, at his mercy. She looked at the door again, and this time, instead of just wishing it were closer, something inside her rebelled. She needed to move. She needed to do something. Fear would no longer control her. She took a deep breath, trying to gather as much courage as she could. But when she looked at him, she saw his smile widen. He knew what she was thinking. He was waiting for her to move, waiting to see her falter, to enjoy her reaction. He wanted a move, anything to make her give in to fear. But now, she knew she couldn't afford to hesitate. Adrenaline began to take over her body. She didn't know if she could do anything. She didn't know if it would be enough. But in that moment, any reaction would be a step toward her survival. The anger she felt now was greater than the fear. She needed to get out of there. With a quick movement, she took a step to the side, trying to head toward the door. But he saw her. He reacted as quickly as she did, blocking her escape attempt with a simple arm movement. The pressure in the air increased even more. His gaze was one of challenge, as if saying, "I knew you would try to escape, and I'm ready to stop you." The train passed through another dark tunnel, and for a moment the lights in the car flickered, leaving everything in a surreal scene. She felt out of herself, but the adrenaline made her act without thinking. She pulled away again, trying to maneuver around his body, but he moved with her, closing the space even further. The game was becoming more real, more desperate. She didn't know what he would do if he caught her, but she didn't want to find out. She tried again, forcing her muscles to move, to go faster. But what happened next caught her completely off guard. The train came to a sudden stop. She was thrown forward, and this time, he wasn't prepared for the change in direction. The movement caused him to be thrown sideways, creating a small opening between them. Time seemed to slow down, but in that second, she had the chance she needed. She didn't hesitate. Without thinking, she ran toward the door, faster than she'd ever felt capable. But before she could reach it, he was already following her, his steps echoing behind her. She looked at the door one more time. Freedom was so close, but panic made her feel like she wouldn't make it in time. He was so close. She was so close to the exit. The door was just a few steps away, but the weight of the situation made it feel farther and farther. Her muscles were tense, but the adrenaline pushed her forward. Clara looked at the corridor. The exit was right there. She was so close, but fear still kept her from breathing normally. The movement of the aggressor behind her was getting closer and closer. She could feel his steps, almost hearing the beating of her own heart, pounding in her chest as if he were inside her. "You're not going to escape, you know?" His voice was low, threatening, and Clara felt a chill run down her spine. He was inches away from grabbing her hand. about to pull her back when, suddenly, a shadow appeared between them. She stopped immediately, her eyes wide, but before she could react, the firm sound of a voice cut through the air. "Get out of her way now." The voice was powerful, authoritative, and the figure that appeared in the path between her and the aggressor looked so imposing that, for a second, she doubted what she was seeing was real. The man who positioned himself between them seemed like an immovable human wall, as if he had been forged for this single moment. His posture was firm, his gaze determined. He didn't hesitate. He was there to ensure that justice was done. The aggressor stepped back, surprised by the sudden interruption, but soon the hatred began to show in his eyes. He seemed unsettled, but quickly regained his confidence and, with a disdainful smile, prepared to react. "I'm not letting you interfere, man," he said, trying to sound threatening, but his voice faltered as if he were realizing that he no longer controlled the situation. The big man didn't move. He just looked at the aggressor with absolute calm, unwavering certainty. "Move away. She won't do anything. You're the one who's leaving." His words were like a strike, so imposing that the aggressor seemed to hesitate, especially when he realized that the new intervener wasn't moving an inch. The imposing man took another step forward, pressing the aggressor, who now seemed destabilized. "You have no power here," the man said with an even firmer voice, and the aggressor, who once seemed dominating, now appeared lost. "Move away." The tension in the cabin increased. The aggressor looked at the man, sizing him up for a moment, and then, in a quick move, he tried to advance, but the imposing figure of the man didn't give way. He blocked his path with the same calm and strength. "I suggested you move away," he said with disconcerting coldness, and the aggressor, now visibly angry and lost, backed off. He looked at the woman one last time with a bitter smile, before turning to leave the car. "You'll regret all this," he hissed, with a tone of threat that he could barely sustain as his steps echoed down the train corridor. When the aggressor finally left, the man stayed where he was for a few more seconds, like a sentry, ensuring that the danger had truly gone. He then slowly turned to the woman. She stood there stunned, watching the man who had intervened with an authority she never imagined seeing in a stranger. He looked at her with an expression of understanding, but without any hurry to leave. He didn't need thanks. He had already done his part. "Are you okay?" The question was direct. No beating around the bush. There was no false compassion in his voice, only genuine concern for what she might be feeling in that moment. He wasn't there to boast about his intervention. He didn't want any kind of gratitude. He wanted to know if she was safe, if what he did was enough to push the fear away. She wanted to answer, but the words wouldn't come. She was standing there, watching him with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. He wasn't expecting a thank you or any gesture of acknowledgement. He didn't want to be a hero. He was just there to make sure justice was done, and that was enough. He knew that true strength didn't come from applause, but from the impact of your actions. She took a deep breath, trying to process everything that had happened. The adrenaline was still running through her body, and fear still lingered in the air. "Yes, I'm fine." Her voice was low, still trembling, but there was something in it that hadn't been there before. A sense of relief, mixed with a strength she didn't know she had. The man looked at her for a moment longer, as if assessing her reaction, before giving a slight nod. "It's all right now. He won't be back. You're safe." With that, he took a step aside, giving her a bit more space. She looked at the door. The station was approaching. She felt the exit now, but the weight of it all was still with her. "Thank you," she finally murmured, but the words seemed small in the face of the magnitude of what had just happened. He just nodded, without saying anything. He didn't need thanks. He already knew that what he had done was enough. The impact of his presence had been more powerful than any word could express. The train slowed down as it approached the station, but for Clara, the movement was slow, heavy, as if the entire world had stopped while she tried to process everything that had happened. The man who had defended her was still there, standing, unperturbed, observing the rest of the passengers without seeming to worry about anything else. She knew he was playing a role. The role of someone who intervened for justice but wasn't there to become the center of attention. He seemed to know his task was done, but for her, everything was still unclear. His intervention had been quick, effective, but the words he spoke echoed in her mind like a lesson. "You're not alone." She felt immense gratitude, but at the same time something deeper was forming inside her, a feeling of empowerment she didn't know she had. He had protected her, but at the same time she knew he wouldn't be there forever. She couldn't always count on someone like him being around. He could disappear at any moment, and that made her ask herself, what happens when no one's around? She looked at him one more time, trying to understand the presence of that man. He seemed like an ordinary person, but his actions told a different story. There was something about him, an aura of confidence, authority, silent strength, that made her question her own response to that situation. She was so used to feeling fragile, so accustomed to feeling helpless in the face of threats, that she hadn't realized the strength she could have within herself. But now, looking at the man, she felt a need to change, to be more than just a victim of circumstance. The train door opened with a snap, and she hesitated. Her stop had arrived. She looked at the man one more time, but he was already walking away, as if he had completed his mission and was now withdrawing. She wanted to say something, but didn't know what. She wanted to thank him, but the words seemed insignificant next to the impact he had on her life at that moment. He didn't ask for anything, didn't seek any reward. He went there, did what needed to be done, and then walked away. A true act of justice, without expecting anything in return. He turned to her one last time before leaving the car. "Don't let fear take over you," he said, his voice deep and firm. "True strength lies in how you react, not in what happens around you." That sentence lingered in the air, as if it were a warning, a lesson she knew she would need to carry with her from now on. She wasn't alone, but more importantly, she didn't have to be weak anymore. She knew she couldn't afford to just wait for someone to save her. She had seen what he did, the ease with which he intervened, how he had stood up and done what was right without hesitation, without fear. And she knew that if he could, she could too. Not in the same way, but with the same courage. She stepped off the train, her legs still a bit shaky, but now with a different feeling. Fear hadn't defeated her. That situation hadn't destroyed her. She was still there. And in a sense, she had won. Not because the threat had disappeared, but because for the first time she felt she could fight back. The sunlight on the street welcomed her as she exited the station. The air was fresh, and the movement of the city seemed the same. But she wasn't the same. She knew things could get worse again, but she also knew that now she had something more important. The certainty that she could face any situation. She looked around at the people hurrying by, indifferent to what had happened. She knew the world wouldn't stop for her, but that no longer frightened her. She had learned something valuable in that subway car, something no one could take away from her, and with that, she was ready to move forward, knowing that her strength was within her, even if she didn't need a hero to protect her. The day was calmer now, but Clara's mind was still in turmoil. As she walked through the busy streets of the city, she felt the weight of each step, as if the world had slowed down for her. Time seemed to be trying to readjust itself, but inside her, something was rearranging itself in a much deeper way. She didn't know exactly what had changed, but she knew she was different, stronger, more confident, and maybe even smarter. As she walked, her thoughts kept returning to the train, to the man who had defended her. His words were echoing in her head. True strength lies in how you react, not in what happens around you. That was more than just advice. It was a life lesson, a reminder that how we respond to challenges is what truly defines who we are. She knew she couldn't live in fear all the time. She knew there were forces in the world she couldn't control, but she also knew she had the power to choose how to respond to those forces. The fear still accompanied her, but now it wasn't a prison anymore. She wasn't paralyzed by the idea of being weak or powerless. She looked around at the people nearby. Many were so immersed in their routines, so preoccupied with their own problems, that they hardly noticed the change that had occurred inside her. That didn't bother her anymore. She knew that, in that moment, she was the only one with the power to transform, and that was what mattered. That man's intervention had been more than just a physical defense. It had been an internal change. He had shown her that there is no greater strength than the courage to stand firm in the face of fear. She got home later that night, but the atmosphere didn't seem the same. Every detail seemed sharper, clearer, as if revealed by something deeper. What happened on the subway wouldn't leave her, but she didn't want it to define her. She had come out stronger, but also more aware of the power she had within herself. As she prepared to sleep, a sense of peace enveloped her. Not because the problem had disappeared or because things were perfect now, but because she knew she was ready to face whatever came next. She was no longer a victim of fear. Now, she was a warrior, and her strength would come from within. She closed her eyes, and for the first time, she didn't feel the panic from before. Fear no longer had the power to dominate her. She wasn't alone. The hero who helped her rise was inside her now. He had been an external intervention, but she knew that deep down the real intervention, the real strength had always been hers, and that would change her life forever.